Welcome back, everyone, today in Startup Week 2020. My name is Kiana. I go by Key. And we hope that you enjoyed your lunch break. We are going to get into this next panel, which will talk about the differences between sales, marketing, and PR or content development, the importance of building a sales strategy into your strategic business plan, and we will share tips on how to build an effective sales funnel. Our moderator for this session is Don Eric Black. Don Eric is a native of Daytonian with over 25 years of entrepreneurial experience. And in his current position, Black serves as the Vice President of Business Development for the Oniru Group, a human resources and leadership performance laboratory located in Dayton. In his role, he also provides workshops and one-on-one counseling for existing and startup businesses in the Dayton region. Don Eric also serves as the publisher for the Dayton Weekly News, Dayton's longest-running African-American news publication. Please remember to submit your questions for Q&A in the Socio app, then navigate to the home screen and click Session Q&A and select this session, Sales Panel. From there, you can submit your questions to the moderator. Now over to you, Don Eric.
All right, thank you, Key. And thank you, Startup Dayton participants, for allowing me to be a part of the Dayton Startup Week. I'm really excited about being able to host the sales panel. And thank you to the Startup Dayton staff for being able to put this together virtually. I know we're all doing business in different ways, and we've all had to pivot in our various professions. So kudos to them for being able to bring us another great Startup Week virtually. So I want to jump right in, but first I want to introduce our panelists for today. First off is Charles Nick. You all may have heard of Charles. He was one of the finalists for a very popular TV show, national TV show, and Charles is the president of Third Wave Water, the founder and CEO of The Right Cup, and founder and manager of Devalis Labs. Charles has been a speaker at all prior Startup Weeks, and his coffee products have also been featured every year as well. Next, we have Pam Cohn. Pam is a business professional with experience leading and growing and promoting local, national, and international businesses, and she is currently the market director for Avitra Accelerators here in Dayton, Ohio. So thank you both for joining us today. So our panel discussion today is about sales. I think it's safe to say that sales is the backbone of every business. Probably the most important aspect of having a successful business. If both of you could take a few minutes to walk us through your first major sale, I think that's always a pretty pivotal point in any new business owner. So if you could just walk us through the first big sale that you had, how it felt to close that deal, and kind of tell me what your thoughts and emotions were when you first realized that you had your big sale. So we can start with you, Pam.
Thank you, Don Eric. I agree with you that sales is a very important aspect of a business. And I think for me, the sales always starts with building a relationship. So I've worked various roles in sales. I have a background in interior design. So when I worked for a design firm, Crispin's in Centerville, Ohio, for a period of time, my biggest sale was a dining room space. And it started when the customer first entered into the store in our meet and greet. And the greet, I always look to connect with someone. And so we provided in-home design services. So I went into her home, I reviewed her space, and I listened to what she wanted. So interior design is problem solving. So you're looking to solve the problem, not necessarily sell the merchandise. And so her dining room space was nice. She had one piece in there that she wanted to make sure she kept. And that was a grandfather clock that her grandfather had brought from Germany. And so whatever you changed in the room, she wanted me to keep that clock. And so as we talked about what she wanted for the space, I told her I could do that. And when we delivered and we had the installation, another thing she told me was her favorite color was yellow. So listening to your customer is always important. And so when we entered the space and we had the delivery people come and they had the install, we made sure there was still space for that grandfather clock. And all the pieces that we chose all made that grandfather clock fit in, even though it was an antique. And she had a very modern design. Anyone that's familiar with Crispin's, we were contemporary modern. And I chose artwork that really had pretty soft and vibrant yellow colors. So what I remember most about that experience was the look on her face when the installation was complete. At the beginning of the installation, she was nervous. And she liked nature, so we had a lot of natural elements in there, even still in the contemporary design. And so by the time we were finished, I had told her, I said, just trust me, just trust me. And tears ran down her face when the installation was complete. And the dining room was a high ticket item when you talk about for furniture pieces. It was a high ticket sale. I felt fulfilled when I finished. I felt that I had met my customer's need. I felt that I had given her something above just adding furniture pieces to her home. I had caused her dream to be realized and her vision to be realized for her new space, and kept a promise that we were going to be able to keep that accent piece into her space. You're a little bit muted.
Oh, sorry about that. Thank you for sharing that story with us. Charles, do you want to talk about your first big sale?
I admit mine may not have been as deeply connected with the customer. Mine was more of probably just some people I knew. But it was still that moment when you asked the question, your first big sale. At first I was like, what is my first big sale? Is it with my current company? Is it just by money? And then I'm like, no, it's probably the one that made the most impact on me personally. So that one was really a part of a t-shirt business I was trying to start forever ago. And it flopped horribly, but it taught me so many different things. But during that, I sold maybe 2 shirts, to be honest, out of the whole thing. I was not doing very well. I wasn't a very good salesperson. But in trying to build the t-shirt company, I ended up finding a different need for a friend of mine as you're sharing with your friends what you're doing. And they're like, well, actually, I need X, Y, and Z. So it diverted the entire business, and I ended up providing like a block of 48 shirts for a friend for some event they were doing. And even though it was only 48 shirts, it was still this moment where I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I'm able to be in commerce, I'm helping people, I'm buying something from someone else. It's silly to think, but I really enjoyed the thought of being able to keep things moving in commerce. I don't know why that seems like some weird enjoyment, but it is a part of it. So being able to buy stuff from other businesses and keep them working and growing and providing a service at the same time was a part of my first sale.
So it really sounds like you both found your space, and it wasn't so much about the sale as much as it was about really being needed in your particular space and providing someone else with what they were trying to achieve. So that makes it that much better when you're able to really sell something that you really believe in, and you can help your customer or your client out in that respect. So kudos to both of you for that. I do want to ask, just from a standpoint of collecting that data and that information that you need to be an effective salesperson in whatever capacity, whether it's B2B, whether it's B2C, what kind of information did you rely upon to build out a particular sales strategy, both internal and external, whether it was researching clients, researching the industry? How did you build out your sales funnel? Charles, you can answer first if you like.
Sure. In the beginning, it was just trying to get anything moving. I would say through the right cup, through third wave water, the biggest thing that I've kind of come back to and leaning upon is through the book, The Lean Startup. You have some basic assumptions you're trying to put together. You have to define some kind of a customer segment, and these people really care about what I'm trying to deliver. And if you're looking for product market fit, that's what everybody's trying to find. You have an idea and some kind of a widget or sales product, you're trying to connect it with those group of people that should love it today. Like if they're searching for you on the internet, they're trying to find you. So the first thing for me would be in sales, it was trying to find validation. So whatever the validation was, it may not even be a sale initially as much as it's validating the assumptions of the business. So some of the methodologies that he talks about in the Lean Startup would be, even before you even try to make a sale, you validate the need, if possible. It's not always possible, but a lot of the times you can talk to your customer now and be like, do you really have this problem? And then just find out and see what they say. Yes, but I do this instead. And you start finding out what other things are there. So for me, in the long and the short, I guess, before sales, it's really trying to validate the need for the product if possible, and then kind of pivoting from there. I think you're muted again.
It's going to be a long day if you can't hear me. Sorry about that. Pamela, give me your thoughts.
I would think so. I've been in 3 different roles as far as sales were concerned. I believe, you're in sales, you sell yourself every day. So in a sales funnel or building up sales, I would say when I worked for functional formularies, I had a product and it was an industry that I didn't know anything about. So my first start was, and I know we're talking to entrepreneurs, so they should know their product, but they should know their product and also where their product fits in the market. And so, but if you have your sales team, they need to know their product. Even when I worked for Christmas, I knew the product. I knew what we had on the floor. I knew what we had in the storeroom. I probably knew what was getting ready to come. I knew when it could be delivered into your home. You need to know your product. You need to know how it fits the market. So what I did was I learned the product and the need for it. So it was formula for people who were tube fed. So I had to learn about people who were tube fed. I had to learn about that because I didn't think much of it, because I didn't know anyone personally that was affected in that manner. So in researching and discovering for myself, I found out no one talked about the food. People talked about the apparatus, they talked about the condition. They didn't talk about the food intake that people were taking. So that's where I understood where we fit, because our product was whole food. So in understanding where we fit and we're understanding where we fit into the market, then I was able to build out how many people actually engage with people who are tube fed. Our first initial target audience were registered dietitians. So over time, I expanded that. How many people who put the tube in, who wrote the prescription, who saw them on their wellness checkups. And so we went from RDs all the way to gastrologists to surgeons in critical care. Over the time that I worked, even speech pathologists, we expanded the audience. And then where do they find information? So you're saying, what do you need to know? Where do they go to find product? Where do they go to find information? So you have to meet them where they are and where they're looking for you. And it's not all the time that they're going to go to you. You have to go to them. So I learned that. And I needed to know who was the decision maker, who was the point of contact, how can I reach them, and how often did they meet together. And so that developed a lot of travel through trade shows, doing presentations at hospitals, so that developed that type of putting our ads in their publications who they trusted. So I had to learn who they were, and I had both. And there's a misconception that you only have one customer, whether it's B2B or B2C. We had both. We had the people who used it and wanted it and fell in love with it and changed their lives. And we had the people that were going to actually write the script and the people who were going to supply it. So it was just I think the strategy overall, anyone that had anything to do with helping that person get that product, they were my customer.
Gotcha. Gotcha. So I think the consensus would be is of course you have to know your product inside and out, but it's also important to know the industry, what other products are out there. I think the better I know my competition, the better I can know where I fit, and then also the need. I think what happens with a lot of entrepreneurs, especially new ones, they come up with this great idea and they never ask the question of what is the need for it, you know, and to be able to know the industry and what the needs of the consumer are is vastly important. And I think that's a really good segue into my next question. And I'm going to make a little bit of an assumption and assuming that everybody on this that's listening or watching this panel knows what a SWOT analysis is. It's something that if you're building out your sales strategy or even your business plan, it's hard to get around. And the SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so when I think about building out that sales strategy, I want to pose a question to you guys. How did you leverage those internal and external environments in planning and building out your sales strategy for your particular business? Pamela, if you want to go first.
Okay. So when we launched Aviatra this year, mid-March, at the onset of the pandemic, we knew we had a strength that we offered a service with helping women in business. We knew that the weakness would be that I was new to the dating market. I wasn't necessarily familiar with the industry, but the opportunity was that we were adding a benefit. We didn't realize the threat would be such a huge threat as far as the pandemic. So like a lot of entrepreneurs, we did have to pivot. So the ideas that I had done before with functional formularies, they all had to change. My number one sales tool and strategy was face-to-face interaction. If I could get the product before you or the information before you, all I had to do was educate you about what I was selling. So this was totally different because no one was meeting in person. So I again had to go where they were. My sales strategy began as finding the opportunity, which was virtual. So a lot of women meet online virtually in virtual networking groups. And so I've attended a lot of online networking groups, coffee shops. So that became my new leverage, my new face-to-face. You need to know what works best for you. Emailing people doesn't work best for me. Email campaigns, I'm sorry guys, hate them. But whoever said that was the best marketing strategy ever, it did work for me. Face-to-face works for me, making connections, building trust. I found that I could communicate in this platform. So I turned it around. We saw an opportunity to support women who are in business existing, not necessarily because you can use Aviatra resources regardless, whether you are a new business or you're existing. So we started talking to those women who were already in existing businesses. How can we help you? What resources do you need? And so turn all those external things that we thought that would cause us not to be able to provide this to a different way that we could provide it and enter into the market. And I found the resiliency of entrepreneurs that they're still willing and able to launch a business. And we've already had our first successful cohort.
Great. Thank you very much. Charles?
So I'll be honest, we didn't do a SWOT analysis initially, but it's completely fine because you still do the same things in the back of your head. You're trying to figure out and leverage, like, what assets do I have in order to execute some kind of a strategy. For us, it was really having someone as an inside man in the industry that had a ton of tacit knowledge already. And it wasn't just, I know specialty coffee. It was, I know these people in specialty coffee. Or at least I know of these people in specialty coffee. And that was the most important thing for us, because then our next test for validation was to send those people that we thought were the most important our product to see what they say. And they replied, quite a bit of them. And one of them was like a head roaster for a really, really big, amazing coffee company. And he sent us back something and he's like, we have 5 Q graders and all of them say what we have custom water in our shop, but what you provided in this little vial, we were doing plastic vials back then, was actually better than the water system we have for our cafe. So we immediately knew that it worked, and we were getting validation where they took the time to actually contact us back and let us know that it truly was happening. So on the internal, external side, internally, our team, at least someone on our team had the tacit knowledge to know in the industry. So I like what you were saying, Don Eric, like someone knows what's going on in your market. It's not just kind of just stepping into a black room and you're like, well, hope this works. And you throw something, which, you know, sometimes it sticks and 99.9% it doesn't. So we had the tacit knowledge, and then the next step was externally testing it with those other people in the industry and sending them product to try.
That's awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. I want to do a little bit of a pivot real quick and talk a little bit about marketing and PR and content management and things of that nature. So in a lot of cases, in many cases, advertising, sales, and marketing or content development. Can you guys hear me okay? Can you hear me? Okay. Advertising, marketing, and content development get kind of grouped together. Is it important to build out these plans separately, or is it okay to kind of lump them all together? If you guys could talk a little bit about your strategies and how you matriculate or cross in and out of both, and how important is it to keep them separate, or to kind of build out a program that kind of incorporates all three at the same time? Charles, if you want to go first, that'd be great.
Sure. So in the beginning, I 100% admit we did not differentiate between sales, marketing, PR, and these other things that we would definitely classify differently today. In the beginning, it kept coming back to, can we find enough people that really care about our product to take the next step? On the official definition, we may not have even known, to be honest, like what those real separations were. It was more of how much churn equals how much residual. Like if we're doing a trade event, did we make any sales? If we launch a website and we're hiring people, like when I'm putting in money and resources, is something happening on the other side? So initially, I would say it's not 100% important to differentiate, but eventually it is. Like as you're growing and you're really starting to spend your money and time to understand how marketing works different, or even PR, and being able to leverage those assets and communicating with the right people in the news industries on particular topics versus social media versus sending out a B2B, like a person in sales. Like, do you have somebody that's a wholesale manager or that can actually go out and communicate? Once you start to grow, and I will take one step back really quick. Some businesses will need to understand the differences depending on what your business model is. For us in the beginning, it was very online product oriented. So we didn't have to, I didn't feel like it was such a pressure to know like sales, marketing, wholesale, like how do we segment everything as much as we were just pushing as much as we could in all these different venues until something hooked. Today, we definitely are differentiating between them because just to track costs and return on investment for each one, because that's how we're really wanting to see the effectiveness as we grow.
That's great. You both talked quite a bit about, well, you mentioned trade shows. Just briefly tell me, how did you gauge the return on investment? Was it just sales? Was it potential relationship building? Did you ever come away from a trade show thinking that was a complete waste of time? So if you could just touch base real quick, both of you, on just that a little bit, because I know in most industries there are opportunities to congregate in a convention hall somewhere, or now virtually, with people within the industry. How important is it to be in that space? Charles?
For us, it was absolutely pivotal. It helped us validate our product in 30 days. So like we had the right people. When you're sitting in an event hall and you say you can do a few different ways, you can go as an attendee and just look around and talk to the people that have their booths, or you can have a booth yourself and then see what people stop by and say hello and ask you questions. Both are very effective in different ways, but at a very minimum, I say find the trade show that's in your industry and go. And even if you just go to the first one as attendee, you're going to meet people that it's all the latest. It's typically the latest stuff of what's going on, and they'll know. You're going to shortcut a lot of learning on topics because you may think you're original on something and then find out that somebody else is already doing it 2 booths down. So it's a learning exercise for your industry. It's a get to know. You mentioned the other big takeaway is not just sales. If you do have an event, it's those relationships. Those are usually more important, I would say, than the sales themselves. And honestly, that was definitely our perspective. We would walk away with some sales, but it was really with the business cards and the people that we met, that those are the relationships we created later to grow our business faster.
Gotcha. Pamela?
I would say when I was with Functional Formularies, it was the bread and butter for us. And so we started off with a small number. And by the time 2018 ended, we probably went to 80 with our sales staff and our brand ambassadors. So that was from small to large scale. I think you're successful with a trade show if you plan to be at the trade show. You need a strategy for the trade show. You need to let the attendees know you're going to be there. You need to find a placement within the event that's high traffic. And we would get right next to our competitors, even though they were much, much larger than we were. And so we were in the vein. So we showed up to make a presence. We knew what to say. You knew how to educate people about your product. You had collateral that was engaging and that people wanted to take and have interest in it. So it was very much so. But the biggest, I think, takeaway for us and advantage we had was we planned to be at the trade show. And then it built relationships. So it wasn't necessarily that I was looking for the sale because we didn't sell there, but it was the relationship. And one of the hugest thing, because our product was so new in the market, we had naysayers. And so we were disruptors. So this one gentleman, he was a surgeon. He was like, oh, wow, this is just, basically, quote unquote, we would call snake oil for quite a bit of time. And I had an answer. And I said, if I had this condition and I was fed by mouth, this is the diet you would feed me. The next year, attended the same trade show, and he came to me, and he, from Johns Hopkins, that's where he was a surgeon. He said, this is what you told me last year, and this is the only thing that I prescribe to my patients. So you can't measure that. We could measure and say how many orders came in from Johns Hopkins and say that was a win-win, but that validation from someone that prestigious, from that prestigious of a hospital, actually was the bigger win.
That's a great story. I love hearing those types of stories. So in the vein of building relationships and having sales, and having been in the sales space in one form or another for the past 25 years, I've had 1 or 2 situations where I had seller's regret. I know we've all had that type of situation before, but can you guys real briefly share with me your most painful seller's regret and what you could have or would have done differently to make that a better experience? Pamela, you can go first.
Oh, that's a trick question. Because then you'd have to admit that you made a mistake. I would say being a rookie and being a rookie designer, you have something in your head and that you want to do. I think the biggest mistake you can make is not trusting people around you and sharing. But I had designed this space, and it was a basement space. And so basements can have low ceilings, and it can tend to be kind of dark, as it were. And I put this espresso brown bookcasing in there. And it was not skeletal. The back was enclosed. So, it sucked up all the light. And so when I did the installation, I thought to myself, oh, my God, you have just really messed up. This is a cave, And so and I just thought, oh, gosh, this is so ugly. So then I had to fix it. So then we had to, I had to recommend paint. I had, brighter colors to lighten up the space, to fix the problem that I made, opposed to fixing the problem that the lady actually initially assigned me to do. So that was very regretful, but I learned from it. to ask people around you, because you don't know what you don't know, and if you're new to anything, you're bound to make mistakes. You had me admit something in front of everybody that I did wrong.
No, you're all right. We won't hold you to it. Charles, you want to talk about an experience you may have had early on?
No, it's too embarrassing. No, I'm just teasing. No, we had so we had distribution blocks that you could buy during our Kickstarter, and they were supposed to be for different countries, and we really kind of overstepped our boundaries in what we thought we could do, because all these different countries that people were signing up when we were selling required translation services, and they had to have very specific things on the product. So we ended up buying this like generic white box, and then came up with this sticker that we would print all this different language translation stuff and put it on, and the product just looked horrible. It really was. It wasn't a good sales experience for them. We even had one of them come back and complain to us, and they're like, "Is this real? Like, you really meant to sell this to us?" And we're like, "It's funny you should put it that way. Yes." And we worked on that relationship, and honestly, that particular relationship is a big one for us in Canada, and has continued to grow because we also still went to resolve it. So even though we gave them a product they weren't happy with, we worked harder and came up with something better that looked a lot nicer as a product for them to sell.
That's awesome. I think in both situations, I think it's safe for us to say that customer service is very important. Good stuff.
Yes.
Good stuff. So along that coaching and sales line, as you started to build out your product or your service, was there ever a time where you may have received outside coaching or sales strategy coaching? Yes, no, and if so, why or why not? Pamela?
So when I first learned sales, the owner, they had external sales strategy. We had to watch. They trained us in-house, but it was information they had on hand about the fundamentals of just sales and building relationships. And I think that gave me the foundation of sales. I could design in my mind. I could design, but I didn't have the skill set to be able to sell. So he had to train us how to do that, how to sell our services. So I think training and coaching is important. And I also think that continuing that. So in my current role at Aviatra, it's a service. It's a program that we're offering to people and selling. So I've relied on mentors. I've relied on coaches to help me in this. I know what we're offering, but this is something totally new, and this is a new market. So I think I'll be at a disadvantage and do myself a disservice without asking people. If I don't have it offered through our company, then it's something that I seek out individually. I don't think you can ever learn everything about your market or everything about your customer, because I think when you do that, one, you're going to get stale, and maybe a little bit automated, So I think it is important to seek out new concepts to really energize yourself about being able to sell your product or service.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Charles, you want to touch on that?
Sure. So my initial sales training probably came from working in the Salem Mall. People remember that. The Salem Mall, the clothing store. So they're teaching you funny little tips, hey, if somebody's walking in with a bag, go and approach them, make sure you're helping them, and, ask them what they're looking for, kind of at a very basic level. Beyond that, though, to be honest, it was really trying to find a methodology in a book of some sort. So I kind of stumbled through Zig Ziglar and some other different sales methodologies, and I kind of came back to one person saying, there are different methodologies, but just pick one and run with it. And if it breaks, then try to fix it or find another one then. But there are so many different sales strategies books, and it's just really trying to pick one particular type of approach and using that and just follow through and learning it as much as you can, and then try it. Those are my thoughts.
That's great. I do want to elaborate a little bit on what you said about picking one sales strategy and really going with it. In the era of so much being given to us, cloud this, online that, I find that I could literally change my sales strategy or the software or the delivery method that I use every single month, it seems like. Would you guys could you recommend, or what do you guys use to really hone in, whether it's software or a specific type of strategy that you use to really build out your sales and track your sales, whether it's goals, setting your goals, or content, or even customers? Is there anything you use specifically that you found that works really well?
I'm going to say, as far as software is concerned, found Salesforce to be easy to use, easy to operate. Is that what you're meaning? But you have to use it, right? You can't have a software and not utilize it and not take advantage of what all it offers. So you have, I think, first within yourself, you have to make up your mind. You're going to be intentional. You're going to build relationships that you have something to offer that they actually need, and you're solving a problem. And then you have to be intentional on how many times and how often you want to touch base with that person and communicate with them and build that relationship. I think that is hugely important. So I have to now, with us being, the companies I worked for before were smaller, but this is smaller. So I have to be intentional to say, and I have to budget time to do that. So you can be so busy selling that you don't organize yourself and organize how to sell and how to build relationships and take time to do that. That's as big a part of the sales, and keeping track of the people and the point of contacts and knowing them by name and gatekeepers and knowing who you need to talk to and how often and what they're doing. That is a part of sales as well. So make no difference what app or software you use, you still have to do that work, and before, it used to just be a calendar. You'd put down contact so-and-so in 3 months. Now you have this great automated system, but you still have to use it, and it still has to be intentional.
Gotcha. I believe that wholeheartedly. The software is only as good as the information you put into it. So, Charles, you want to share with us?
Sure. So for being e-commerce, we use Shopify as a primary tool for selling, and we've gone through a bunch of variations of tools, and Shopify has honestly been one of the most powerful for us. It has a lot of really good analytics and metrics and things you can see and what's happening. Beyond that, though, some of it's like learning how to use Google Tag Manager. People are afraid of it, but you don't have to be. It really does work. You just tag different pieces of your website and you can see more of what's going on. But as far as CRM or customer relationship management, where we started on the cheap end and it really worked well was Podio. It's like $8 a month, I think, per person. And then you can add Globiflow, adding more automation as necessary. You can do tagging for like follow-ups, because what she's saying is 100% true. No matter what software you're using, if you're not following up, it becomes just becomes a useless database. And that's always the challenge. You're trying to pull in a bunch of people and then qualify them and get their attention and talk to them and make sure you're spending that time building the right relationships with the right people. And I'll just throw this one out as a funny quote that I think makes the most sense, is what Jim Collins said in Good to Great, which is technology is an accelerator for what's already working. It's not the fix. So if you're trying to use technology to fix your business, most of the time it's not going to be the fix. It's going to be the execution.
Those are very true words to live by. I could sit here and ask you guys questions for the next hour, but I know that we have to get to some great questions that we have from our participants. I did want to ask one more question real quick. If you guys could talk a little bit about mentors. I'm sure both of you have been mentors, but tell me about a mentor relationship that you had and how that helped you build your business. Pam?
I've had many mentors in different levels, but in this last role, an individual just offered to help me grow the Dayton market for Aviatra. And because we do work with women and they are minorities, he said to qualify them, because my overall mission was for Aviatra to impact their lives, for them to impact the lives of their family, to eventually impact the Dayton community. And he said, that's a huge task. He says, I'm going to say to you, in order to do that, you need to qualify these participants differently. They're not going to come the road from where they are to being this great entrepreneur that they want to be, or even get into this space, has not been linear and will not be. So you're going to have to ask them different qualifying questions. Ask questions like, what was their greatest obstacle and how did they overcome it? Because they're not going to come to you maybe from Ivy League. They're not going to come to you straight out of college. And so, but you can learn a lot from them if you ask the right questions. And so that was great advice. And I found out that offering a service and not a product, not that different from how I tend to do business, but it really has helped how to open my ears even more and ask the right questions, and not just the canned questions that we can sometimes ask, and it's caused me to be able to not only provide them with a program, but also do that underlining mission that I'm seeking to accomplish.
Great, thank you. Charles, you want to touch on that real quick?
Sure. So for me personally, I admit I did not seek out mentorship as much in the beginning, and I really, I'm glad you brought up this question, because it's so important later looking back. I wish I would have found a mentor sooner. So even if it's just, somebody you respect in business, they may not be the end all, be all mentorship that you're looking for your business, but just start somewhere. For us on the business advisor side, we use a local business in Dayton called Aileron, and they coached us how to build a board of advisors, and that to me was like this huge next step epiphany that was like, oh my goodness, why did we not know about this sooner? So building a board of advisors, it's really just finding mentors that are filling in the places that you're lacking the most. And you can ask, VPs of Microsoft or anybody. You can try to woo anybody onto your board, and that's the fun part. You give them $500,000-$600,000 or something for a 4-hour meeting, once a quarter. But you're really trying to get their attention to say, help me think like you. So the other part of the board isn't just to get the answers; it's to have you have to coach your board a little bit too. And even, maybe your mentors, and trying to get them to ask you the right questions and not give you the right answers.
Gotcha.
Just a little bit, Donna Rick. I'm sorry, because I love my board, my advisory council board, and they've been fabulous. So I would say what I didn't know, they knew, and they became eyes and ears to bring me information, and very successful in our launch. And if I didn't have that, I would say there have been a lot of missing pieces that I didn't know. So I totally agree with him in that.
Gotcha. We did have a few questions I want to jump into real quick. The first question is to the group. What's the best way to build confidence in selling my product or my service whenever I am, or how do I leverage opportunities?
I'll go first on the confidence one. Maybe it would be on the approach of branding, marketing, execution, where you make sure you build a great product. Don't cut the corners that your customer is going to be angry about. There is something to be said about MVPs, minimum viable product, and providing, a base level of what's needed, but giving them at least what they're really needing. And we didn't talk about market segments too much. Jeffrey Moore's book, Crossing the Chasm, would go into more details for those watching. Definitely read that book. But if you're going for your innovators, your early adopters, back to what Don Eric, you said earlier, understanding your market and how you're going to make them happy on that base level for your minimum product, but just do a good job building it.
Pamela, any thoughts on that?
Again, echoing, you have to know your product. You have to know it. No one can sell it better than you. If you're going to have staff, they need to have buy-in. And so I would say there never was a day selling products. If I'm going to be a salesperson for you, I won't sell anything I don't believe in. And so there never was a day that I was ashamed to hit Crispin's sales floor. We had quality products. There never was a day that I was ashamed to promote functional formularies products. And so Aviator, I'm not ashamed to be the director for Aviator. So I think you're not going to be your sole salesperson. You're going to have more salespeople, and they have to believe in your product, and they have to represent you and the company when they're out there. And so if they have that mindset and the belief in the product, you won't really sell it. You just educate people and tell them what it is. And it has to be more to you than a thing. It has to be more to you than I'm selling a widget to get rich. It has to have something to it, because people do not buy things, because there's so many things. Let's face it, there's so many things, there's so many services, there's so many opportunities to buy from someone else, but why should they buy it from you? And so you have to give them your why, and that has to be true. It cannot be made up. It cannot be fabricated. The greatest marketing team cannot, package that up for you. It's going to have to be sincere. How can you leverage opportunity? As many people as you can get your product in front of, expand, and do so, and build out your team.
Okay, so I've got two more questions. One, this next one is geared more towards Charles. Charles, what would you consider a good percentage growth in sales each quarter? I know it's a hard question.
Why only me? No. It would depend, I would say, on the stage of your company. So for the very beginning, when we launched Third Wave Water, we were growing like 25% a month, but it didn't matter. There's still such small numbers. We're not reaching anywhere near market saturation, and they look like big growth numbers as a percentage. But dollar-wise, it's adding, 5,000 to 10,000. It's not a huge jump. So as you're growing on the percentage side, you're trying to, depending on what you're doing as an exit strategy, are you trying to get to market saturation? I would say as a growth, just make sure you're positive and you can pay your bills. I mean, I don't mean to oversimplify it, but is you're growing, like to put a target on it and say, I want to grow 15% this quarter. I don't know if the percentage is the greatest as a goal, as much as the strength, opportunity, weakness, your SWOT tactic, and here's another acronym for you, the GHOST. I don't know if either of you have done that, where you goals, objective, strategy, tactic, where you try to start with your goal and break it to an objective, and then your strategy and your tactics. And the tactics are the go-to on the ground. What am I doing to grow the business type of activities? And going through those exercises will help you find out what you're going to do. So to answer the question, I don't know if I could really come up with a better, with a really good solid number that I would put on it. As much as early growth, you're going to have bigger numbers, and that's okay. Jeffrey Moore's book's going to go through you're going to have a bigger bubble on the early adopters and innovators, and then it's going to drop back off before you get to early mainstream. So don't be alarmed if your growth numbers start to drop and you've already saturated your early adopters and innovators, but just start to plan to reach the mainstream market. I don't know if that answers the question.
It does. It does. And thank you for that. So Pam, this last question is for you. How did you move from interior designer to tube feeding innovator? And is the tube feeding still a business that you're involved in?
Thank you. It was a big, huge leap, wasn't it? So the long short of that was I had a point in my life Well, interior design, the market changed. This was 2009, 2010, 11, and 12. And so the economy never really bounced back for Dayton at the time. And I was a part of my life that I wanted to do something that really had more meat on the bone as far as meaningful, not knocking that industry, because that will be my retirement industry to go into, to do that again. But I went back to school and studied communication studies. And from that led to marketing and sales and all of that. And when I saw the advertisement for the job on Indeed, I just knew that put all of those things together. My husband was Air Force, so years ago I managed a chiropractic clinic. So when I put the totality of my life together, that led me to functional formularies, which was probably one of the most rewarding experiences I ever had. Functional formularies is still a viable business. Robin Gentry McGee, who's a part of Startup Week, actually exited the company and sold it. But her and I have partnered because one of our last conversations when she exited was, what do you want to do with your time? And she said, I want to help women in business. So not necessarily involved with functional formularies, but in so much involved with the founder. And so she was our inaugural sponsor for Aviator Dayton because she actually went through the program to start functional formularies. So here I am. So it was almost like a full circle moment.
Well, that's awesome. I can't thank both of you enough. Kudos to you and what you've done in your various industries, as well as what you've been able to bring to the Dayton small business ecosystem. Continued success to Third Wave Water and Aviatra. I'm looking forward to getting to know each of you better. I love sitting at the feet of people who know, and you guys obviously know. So thank you for sharing your words of wisdom with us today. This brings to a close our sales panel. We went a few minutes over, but I think it was well worth it. So thank you, Startup Dayton Week, for giving us the opportunity, and thank you to our wonderful participants for sharing their knowledge with us.
Thank you, Don Eric, for being our moderator today. And yes, seconding his thoughts. Thank you both for sharing your knowledge with our panel. We are getting ready to head into our next session. The fireside chat with the Robin that Pam mentioned is tomorrow at 11, so tune back in. And then another shout out, we wouldn't be able to put this week on without our sponsors, Fifth Third Bank, Wright State Applied Research Corporation, and the Entrepreneur Center are our title sponsors for this year. So our next panel today is on company culture in these changing times. So toggle out of this session and jump into the next one, and we'll see you shortly. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.